For most of modern business history, growth and sustainability were framed as opposites. To scale meant to extract more, consume faster, and externalize costs that nature quietly absorbed. The planet paid the bill, and balance sheets celebrated the results. But the rise of sustainable startups signals a profound shift in this story. These companies are not built on the belief that doing good must come at the expense of doing well. They are built on the harder, more ambitious idea that long-term success depends on aligning profit with planetary limits. Sustainable startups do not begin with slogans. They begin with constraints, finite resources, fragile ecosystems, increasing regulation, changing consumer values. Books and case studies on sustainability-driven businesses reveal that these founders do not see environmental limits as obstacles, they see them as design parameters. Instead of asking how to grow at any cost, they ask how to grow without borrowing against the future. This question reshapes every decision that follows. One of the first myths these stories dismantle is that sustainability is a niche concern. Early on, green businesses were often dismissed as idealistic or unscalable. But the literature shows that sustainability becomes inevitable. As scale increases, waste compounds, supply chains stretch, energy costs rise, regulatory pressure intensifies. Startups that ignore these forces may grow quickly, but they grow brittle. Sustainable startups, by contrast, build resilience early by accounting for realities others postpone. Another insight emerges clearly across these books. Sustainability is not a feature, it is a system. Swapping materials or offsetting emissions may look impressive, but without systemic thinking, impact remains shallow. The most successful sustainable startups redesign entire value chains. They rethink sourcing, production, distribution, and end of life. Circularity replaces linearity. Longevity replaces disposability. This systemic approach is what allows sustainability to scale alongside revenue. These businesses also challenge a deeply ingrained assumption about cost. For decades, environmental responsibility was framed as an expense. Sustainable startups invert this logic. They treat efficiency as strategy. Reducing energy use lowers operating costs. Minimizing waste improves margins. Designing durable products reduces churn and builds trust. Books consistently show that when sustainability is embedded early, it often improves unit economics rather than harming them. Consumer behavior plays a critical role in this shift, but not in the simplistic way often portrayed. Sustainable startups do not rely on guilt to sell. They do not assume customers will sacrifice convenience or quality for virtue. Instead, they design products that compete on performance first. Sustainability becomes a reinforcing benefit, not the sole value proposition. This realism is why these businesses gain mainstream adoption, rather than remaining symbolic gestures. Another recurring theme is transparency. Sustainable startups operate in an environment of skepticism. Greenwashing has eroded trust. Claims are scrutinized. Metrics are questioned. The books emphasize that credible companies respond by measuring rigorously and communicating honestly. They disclose trade-offs. They admit imperfections. This transparency builds credibility precisely because it resists perfectionism. Customers and partners trust companies that show their work. Technology often acts as the catalyst that makes sustainability viable at scale. Advances in materials, science, energy storage, data analytics, and logistics enable solutions that were previously impractical. But the literature is careful to note that technology alone is insufficient. Tools amplify intent. Without ethical direction, efficiency can accelerate harm. Sustainable startups distinguish themselves by pairing innovation with restraint, using technology to reduce impact, not merely shift it elsewhere. Another powerful insight concerns time horizons. Traditional startups often optimize for rapid exits. Sustainable startups think in decades. Environmental impact unfolds slowly. Ecosystems recover over generations. Books show that founders who commit to sustainability recalibrate success metrics. Longevity matters more than speed. Durability matters more than hype. This long view influences investor selection, governance structures, and growth pacing. Supply chains emerge as one of the most consequential battlegrounds. Many startups appear sustainable on the surface but hide externalities upstream or downstream. The most serious sustainable companies dig deep. They audit suppliers. They redesign logistics. They accept higher short-term complexity to avoid long-term harm. The books emphasize that real sustainability is inconvenient at first, but transformative once embedded. Another overlooked dimension is culture. Sustainable startups attract people motivated by meaning as much as money. This creates powerful alignment, but also demands integrity. Employees expect consistency between values and action. When leadership compromises, trust erodes quickly. The literature shows that culture acts as both accelerator and enforcer in sustainable businesses. It amplifies good decisions and exposes hypocrisy without mercy. As these companies scale, they face a unique tension. Growth increases impact, but also footprint. Sustainable startups must constantly balance expansion with responsibility. The books highlight that this tension never disappears. It must be managed consciously. Growth is not inherently virtuous. It is only virtuous when it improves net outcomes. This discipline separates truly sustainable companies from those that merely adopt the language. Another insight emerges around collaboration. Environmental problems do not respect competitive boundaries. Sustainable startups often partner with competitors, NGOs, regulators, and communities. These alliances accelerate learning and amplify impact. The literature shows that collaboration, once seen as weakness, becomes strength in sustainability-driven markets. No single company can solve systemic issues alone. Over time, sustainable startups begin to influence entire industries. Their practices become benchmarks. Their standards become expectations. Regulation often follows innovation, not the other way around. Books document how early sustainable companies shape policy by proving feasibility. They show what is possible before it is required. This quiet leadership creates change beyond their own balance sheets. And this is where the story begins to deepen. Because once a startup commits to doing good for the planet, not as a marketing angle, but as an operating principle, the question shifts. It is no longer how do we reduce harm, but how do we create net positive impact at scale? It is at this point, where sustainability moves from mitigation to regeneration, that the true ambition of these businesses is revealed, challenging traditional definitions of success and forcing founders, investors, and customers alike to reconsider what progress really means. As the journey continues carefully and deliberately, like a forest regrowing after a long fire, not all at once, but root by root, season by season, with patience as its greatest strength. And this is where sustainable startups reveal their deepest distinction, not in what they claim to stand for, but in how they behave when growth makes their values inconvenient. In the second half of the sustainability story, ambition meets accountability. Early on, it is easy to design responsibly when scale is small and decisions feel symbolic. But as customers multiply, factories expand, and capital enters the picture, sustainability stops being an aspiration and becomes a test. Books that follow mission-driven companies over time show that this is the moment when many stumble. Trade-offs sharpen. Costs become visible. The pressure to compromise arrives quietly, dressed as pragmatism. The startups that endure learn a difficult lesson early. Sustainability is not something you achieve and move past. It is something you manage continuously. Every new market introduces new environmental contexts. Every new supplier introduces new risks. Every new product introduces new downstream consequences. The companies that remain credible treat sustainability as an ongoing discipline, not a milestone. They build feedback loops not just for revenue, but for impact. One of the most powerful shifts that happens at this stage is governance. Sustainable startups formalize their commitments. They embed environmental metrics into decision-making alongside financial ones. Boards ask different questions. Leaders are evaluated not only on growth, but on how that growth is achieved. The books emphasize that without governance, sustainability erodes under pressure. With it, values scale alongside operations. Another defining feature of mature, sustainable startups is their relationship with investors. Not all capital is compatible with long-term environmental goals. Founders who succeed learn to choose patience over valuation, alignment over hype. They communicate clearly that sustainability shapes pace, margins, and strategy. The literature shows that when expectations are set early, trust deepens. When they are hidden, conflict becomes inevitable. As these businesses grow, they also become educators. Customers, partners, and even competitors learn from their transparency. Sustainable startups often publish methodologies, share data, and contribute to industry standards. This openness accelerates collective progress, even at the cost of competitive secrecy. The books highlight this paradox. By sharing more, these companies often strengthen their position because leadership in sustainability is earned through credibility, not exclusivity. Another crucial insight emerges around resilience. Environmental shocks, supply disruptions, and regulatory changes hit unsustainable businesses hardest. Sustainable startups, having designed with constraints in mind, adapt more smoothly. Local sourcing reduces vulnerability. Energy efficiency cushions volatility. Long-term supplier relationships stabilize operations. Sustainability, in this sense, becomes a form of risk management that traditional models overlook. Over time, the narrative around these startups changes. They are no longer described primarily as green companies. They are described as well-run companies. Their practices become normal. Their standards become expected. This is the quiet success sustainable founders aim for, not applause, but normalization. When sustainability disappears as a differentiator because it has become default, the mission has truly scaled. And so the story reaches its deeper conclusion. Sustainable startups are not trying to be perfect. They are trying to be responsible in a world built on excess. They accept complexity. They acknowledge trade-offs. They choose progress over purity. In doing so, they redefine what it means to build a successful business in the 21st century. If this story resonated with you, pause and ask yourself one question. If your company grew 10 times larger, would its impact grow 10 times worse or 10 times better? That answer reveals whether sustainability is truly embedded or merely expressed. Share that reflection. And if you want to keep exploring how businesses can generate profit while restoring rather than depleting the world they depend on, stay connected. Subscribe, follow, and return. Because the future will not be built by companies that grow the fastest, but by those that grow with care.